Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the LaunchDay Shorts podcast. I'm your host, Dean Cvetkoski, a.k.a. WhoDean. Today on the show, I've actually got a pretty good friend of mine that we've connected pretty well over the last couple of years. He goes by the name of Hudson Greening. Hudson, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. It's brilliant to be here, man. It's brilliant to be here. Where are you right now? Because last time, I think when I was speaking to you, you were in Australia, were you not? But now you're overseas?
I'm in Halifax at the moment in Canada.
Halifax, Canada. Love it, man. Love it. You look pretty cozy for minus 10 degree weather,
The heat is real good.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff. So look, guys, I know Hudson as a dating coach. That's still what's going on? Is that right?
Yeah, that's the right term.
Love it. So look, I know, but a lot of other people are going to be watching and listening. They might not know. What is a dating coach and what's the point of having one?
So it very much varies depending on what kind of coach and how they approach things. I guess in the most general sense, it's just like someone who mentors someone through their dating life and helps them improve their dating life, keeps them accountable, gives them support. And but every coach has a different method.
Gotcha. So dating, we're talking about, say, like at what point would I be needing a dating coach, really?
I guess if you weren't happy with just how your dating life was, I think one common misconception is that people think, oh, like I have to be doing really bad and just not be getting anywhere to have a coach. But I've actually worked with a lot of guys who already were, going on some dates. It wasn't too bad, but they just wanted to really ensure that they attracted the most compatible woman that they could to get into a relationship. And that's kind of my message too. It's like, I think guys invest in so many other areas, and yet who you end up with in a relationship is like one of the most important things, one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. So some guys just want to ensure they end up with the right person.
And that's, I find that interesting, right? Because isn't there research that suggests that, highly successful people have, specific types of partners in their lives? Is there any research? I'm pretty sure there is, isn't there?
Yeah, I've heard a few things like that.
Yeah. Oh, what about in instances like you look at, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Musk? They all they're very highly successful people, and they seem to can't hold down their relationships. I mean, did they make the right decision at the time, or?
I think a lot of them also, obviously end up sometimes with women who take advantage of their, the financial situation, the status, and often it's because they're leading with the wrong things. These guys who have the wealth, it's like they're flashing that in front of these women instead of, leading with their true personality and kind of like, not leading with all that flashy stuff,
Yeah. And like there's a pretty big topic going on at the moment as well, right? With a lot of men that are actually some evidence that's come out recently today in an Australian newspaper that was talking about a massive decrease in young people under the age of 35 who all say that they're not interested in marriage because of concerns of who their partner is and the way that the world is going, the direction of feminism, even potentially in that sort of a scenario, right? So, yeah, it's a wild west out there right now, right? How exactly would you suggest? You said leading with your true self and not flashing the money and things like that. So, I mean, how would you suggest that people find? I mean, what do you look for in a relationship? What is it exactly that you need to find that you won't end up with someone like that?
I honestly think for a lot of men, the fundamental problem before you talk about anything else is that they can't even generate enough options or have enough experiences to even really know what they like,
Mm,
you know? And so I think for men, especially, I mean, women have their own struggles with dating, but they're in a different form. But I think where a lot of men struggle is like actually creating an abundance of options, getting an abundance of dates, and then being able to figure out through trial and error in those experiences. Because you could write down a list and write it all down and theorize what your perfect woman is, but
make it
like
like a
you're
job
never gonna
interview,
really know until you like go out there and like meet someone. You're like, okay, it's definitely not that. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not this other thing, and it's gonna change too. It's gonna change as you change. Who you're attracted to will change. So it's a constantly evolving
Mm,
thing, you know. But I think
mm.
that's the fundamental problem: guys not being able to create enough options.
What do you think of, obviously a lot of people under the age of 35 that are just saying, nah, don't want to get married, nah, not interested in having relationships or children, because of the way that certain court systems are built to favor, the other side. I mean, what's your take there, and what would be your advice or suggestions to them?
I think marriage is a personal preference. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I can understand someone maybe not necessarily wanting the government to get involved. You know what I mean? Like I can
mm,
understand that, but I think most people want to have an intimate relationship with
mm,
another person. I think that's a fundamental human desire, and so I think regardless of whether you get married or not, I still think finding the right person is really important. And yeah, I think a lot of marriages fail. I think part of that is due to the fact that people aren't choosing from a big enough pool and not meeting
mm,
someone who's genuinely compatible to begin with, which is not something that a lot of people talk about.
mm. What's compatibility, right? So how do you work that out? Because I think that's probably a massive challenge that a lot of people have. Like, where do you? Because I think remember seeing you say that you're not into like star signs and stuff like that and astrology, but you are starting to see some signs of it, right? That kind of makes sense. I know actually in Hindu culture, they quite literally go to the monks in the temple, and they go through astrology charts to see if you're a good fit. But if you're an everyday person, how do you work out compatibility? How do you figure that out?
Yeah, so the thing I tell guys to do is to just be unapologetically themselves. Like,
Okay.
say everything they want to say, do what they want to do. And the
Mm,
way I look at it is you're either going to attract or you're going to repel those
mm,
women, So, let's say, for example, you liked metal music. Okay, if you said that out loud, there's going to be a bunch of women who aren't into that. And
mm,
so if you follow that thread of just unapologetically owning everything that you like and don't like and being very real about it, you're going to repel
mm.
the women who aren't right for you and you'll attract the ones who are. So that's
Are you
like,
talking about like natural energies of the universe will attract you to these people, or
not necessarily, it's more practical. It's just like, yeah,
okay?
if you're just like really yourself and you say the things you want to say, like you'll push away the wrong people, which is
Mm,
great. That's what you want.
mm. Yeah, I get you, man. I get you.
But
All
I,
of
I
this,
do believe that
yeah.
sometimes we get an intuition. You know what I mean? And I think we've all felt this experience of we see someone and we just feel something special. We
Mm,
can't really explain it. Who knows? But we know that some of us feel like there's something beyond what we could see when we meet someone. It's like we feel this like little spark, this intuition. We go up and there's just something about them. So that's real, you know, as well.
how do you differentiate between the feelings that you have? I mean, how do you differentiate between, for example, that spark, that I just know it, versus the other side, which could be lust, could be I suppose, just someone's looks. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you differentiate those feelings between, this, I'm drawn to this person because there's this genuine intuition versus I have other motives associated to those feelings with that person or how I'm feeling about that person? How do you differentiate between that?
That's a good question. Yeah, I feel like that's why it's so important to build self awareness and to do the inner work. Because what you start to notice is like you have all your typical emotions like fear, anger, lust, all this kind of stuff. But
Mm,
then beneath all of that, you kind of have a sense of this kind of like a love or this more clean kind of intuition. And so that's also how you don't act from reactivity because
mm,
yeah, it's like, yes, okay, the primal animalistic side of you may be like, okay, yeah, that girl's really hot. I want to talk to her. But maybe your
mm,
heart is like a no. So it's like really following the heart is
mm,
really the answer and just that awareness. So when you do things like meditation, as much as
mm,
people, don't want to do it because it's kind of boring, it's like just sitting there and being able to observe your thoughts and emotions and tapping into that observer that is not the thoughts and emotions behind all of it is
mm,
what starts to give you the clarity to see beyond just your emotions. Because at the deepest level,
mm.
you're not just your emotions. Like you can literally sit there observing your thoughts and emotions, realizing you are not them.
And that's something that's an experience that I've personally done with you, right? Because I think now, well, almost 2 years ago to the day, I wouldn't be surprised. Um, you know, there quite literally around this time frame, we did some work together, and it's crazy to think that it's been 2 years. Hey, like
Yeah,
seriously, it's
time flies.
mind blowing, right? But
Nuts.
meditation wasn't something familiar to me, and I was going through my separation with my ex partner or my ex fiance, and oh, geez, like I was in a shit show. Like I was in, yeah, like incomprehensible state of mind, state of physical. Uh, you know, I was a wreck basically. And, I reached out to you because I thought, I don't know, like, what it is actually is part of that intuition, right? So, like, I knew you weren't doing, like, you're a dating coach. I'm going through a separation. It's the opposite end, right? But you know what I mean? But I went through that and I went, okay, I need to speak to Hudson. There's just something telling me that I need to speak to him. And I did a little bit of that meditation and took on a lot of those strategies. And I think even from the opposite end of exiting that long term relationship and all the complexities that came with it, with having children and all the rest of it, by working with you, it actually gave me. I'd have to say that and a combination of a couple of other things, but definitely a really big component of that being working with you, gave me the ability to be so resilient in that within a few months, like I was back at it. I was still, I was still pounding. I was still, not pounding the way that, don't take that out of context. I was still punching the bag, mate. You know what I mean? I was still kicking. But there was this sense of resilience that I feel came from our conversations, the coaching that I received from you, the meditation, and it put me in a better state of mind to deal with what was happening. You know what I mean? So I really, yeah, I have to thank you. Actually, I don't think I've ever done that face to face with you, but I have to thank you for that time because it's actually been really, really helpful, right? So yeah, man.
Yeah,
Uh,
appreciate
yeah, you're very welcome, man. But going back to the intuition, the feelings, how do you know, and moving into those topics of even from my own personal experience, I mean, how do guys avoid the wrong person? I mean, should we be writing lists, or should we be reflecting on what we truly want and then writing lists of red flags? I mean, what exactly should we be doing in those circumstances?
So the interesting thing is there's, something referred to as our attachment system and our
Mm,
attachment style.
mm,
And essentially in our formative years, like the relationship we had with our parents kind of gives us a certain map for attachment. And I
yeah.
know this sounds pretty, academic, but I'll
No,
try to
I
make it.
appreciate it. I love that.
But yeah, it's like a map for attachment. And so let's say our parents didn't give us any love when we were younger. And let's say anytime we wanted to cry and emote, they would just abandon us and like move away and just like let us cry it out or something like that. Well,
Okay.
then that would give a certain, map for attachment in our mind. And then maybe our parents gave us love for particular reasons, like maybe only ever if we were achieving something, if we were learning something. And so that map in your mind of attachment gets formed. And so it's kind of there in the, subconscious mind, just there in the background. We're not even aware of it. And that determines like who we feel connected and even attracted to, because we're attracted to that familiarity. Like we associate it with that map.
Do you think
And
there's more to it than just that?
there's many different ways of seeing it, and there's different aspects,
And do you think that like the attachment styles can evolve over time?
I do, yeah. I think the more healing you do and the more you build new maps of attachment, the better it gets.
Because I know for me, I'd say that over the last couple of years, there is, I wouldn't say it's a strong level, but there is a level of avoidance attachment style. And it's quite contrary to how I was raised growing up, right? So, how I was raised growing up was, I was getting into trouble with police, but for example, when I was like 16, but I always felt supported, right? So I always had my mother going, yep, no, look, I'm not happy about it. I'm pissed. I'm fucking over this shit. But, here's my hand. I'm going to hold it and we're going to go through the whole thing together. Right. So and she was showing an enormous amount of unconditional love. And so then that's the opposite of the avoidance attachment style. But over the last couple of years for me, I've realized I have a certain level of avoidance attachment style where I'm like, oh, fuck, I really don't want to deal with this and fuck off somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's at I don't know. For me, I feel like it's a threshold that I've reached where I'm just like, oh, fuck, that's too hard. Forget about it. You know what? I'm just going to go do something else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
I can understand that.
yeah. I mean, what would be
Yeah,
your advice in that situation?
I would say for some people, it's hard to remember what actually happened before the age of 5. Like, there's so much that happened that we don't even know about. So that's
Okay.
one thing. And also the attachment that we not just have with parents, but if you look at how you had connections even with like your peers and stuff in younger years, that can affect us as well.
Mm,
And
that's
yeah, I mean,
interesting.
it's just one way of viewing reality, like attachment styles. You could also, someone who's went online and watched a bunch of red pill content because girls didn't like them in high school. Like you could go from a normal person who had loving parents to being messed up just through consuming that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. I get you. I mean,
There's
are you
many
trying to
different,
imply something? I mean, I watch a lot of red pill content.
yeah.
Yeah, you
Or even
reckon?
sometimes, someone has a big heartbreak or something like that. And up until that point, they were trusting of people. And then all of a sudden, bam, they get the heart torn out. And then they completely just create like a different, like, idea of how they should be with
Mm.
women. So maybe and that's a trap that a lot of guys fall into. They have these heartbreaks and then they get all this like red pill Andrew Tate kind of advice, which is like shut off your emotions, don't show affection. All women are like, like they're not loyal.
Hey, yes, you. I'm talking to you, and I know it looks like the interview, but it's actually not. We're taking a really quick, short break so that way you can hear me out. I really want you to hear me out here. If you are a business owner, you are building your personal brand. I mean, you could be anyone. You could be a real estate agent, you could be an astronaut, an IT professional. It really doesn't matter who you are and where you fit into the world. This interview is great for you. If you're really struggling to make content, and let's face it, right? When we get our phones out and we're like, taking selfies and doing videos that way, it just comes across as inauthentic. And the other side of that as well is the fact that it's just so hard to come up with ideas of what kind of content to create. And this is where our interviews absolutely bring a powerhouse and an arsenal of, basically a war chest in terms of your organic content marketing that you're creating. We create the TikToks and Reels for you. Here's the thing. I've got some great news. The great news is that this interview is completely free. We boost your SEO on Google because we go and feature these videos like the one you're watching on YouTube. And not only that, but we also give you free content to post to TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and all the rest of it as well. So if you haven't already, in the description down below is a link to Linktree, where you'll see the opportunity for you to book your very own interview and get free content for your personal brand or your business as well. I'll see you on the other side of the screen.
All they care about is status, and guys take on these ideas and it feeds into that like avoidant, cold attachment type,
I get you. And I think that's one thing I'm grateful for with my experience is that, for me, my trust was broken, but I didn't lose that level of faith and trust in others. And so that was something I maintained. And I do think that's a spiritual thing with me, is that, I've always been raised as, as a religious person, believing in God, believing in Jesus. And, no matter, like I've been burned that many times. I kid you not, man. Like, I think in one of my other podcasts, I mentioned I was like $500,000 in the hole because people didn't pay their bills, or they weaseled their way out of paying somehow, or they've taken advantage of me somehow. I've done the work and they've never paid and they've disappeared. You know what I mean? Like there's all these scenarios where my trust has been betrayed over and over and over again. And you'd think that normally in situations like that, someone would, react differently. I think, they'd lose that trust, and I don't think they would be so trusting. But for me, I have a very high sense of trust for a lot of people. Doesn't mean I'm naive. I can spot it, right? I can see it. I think what I've learned now is I can actually see when someone's up to no good. And instead of being distrusting, I still give them an opportunity. I just don't give them all of that trust. Well, I suppose I give them the trust, but I limit how much they get. Does that make sense? So yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, what would you all take be on in my situation here?
I think that takes, courage, Often we don't see it that way. It actually takes courage to trust people, to stay open to people, even though you may get hurt. And to come back to the attachment and stuff like that, like that's what characterizes secure attachment. It's just that ability to be able to give love. And if it isn't received, it's like knowing you can handle whatever may happen to you. And I think a lot of guys have a fear of intimacy or loving a woman, and they never really view it this way, but it's actually kind of, it's weakness or a lack of courage if you can't express like love and just be real with women, or you have to play games. Like it's a type of cowardice, but no one ever says that,
I get you. Well, Hudson, who are the people that you work with? Like, I mean, like if you're talking about your ideal client, or probably someone that you work with more often than not, I mean, what are they? Are they big CEOs, or are they everyday people? I mean, what sort of category do they fit into?
Kind of a combination, but a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people who work in, professional occupations as well, lawyers, doctors. Yeah, some guys who work in IT, although I get that a little bit less nowadays. I think nowadays I'm getting more entrepreneurs and people who've achieved a lot within their life. And I think I tend to attract guys who are a little bit older as well than, let's say, my other friends who are dating coaches. And I think that might be due to the fact that what I teach is a little bit more mature.
Mm.
It's not like playing games and stuff.
Yeah, I get you. Because look, there is a big disparity between someone like you and someone like Andrew Tate, right? Because someone like Andrew Tate preaches, like you said, right? So don't show emotion, be the man, etc., and so on, and not showing any love or compassion. But I feel like that, for Andrew Tate, there's a different persona. I think behind the scenes, I think he's a little bit more softer, but he adopts a certain persona in front of the camera. You know what I mean? Because I have seen glimpses of a level of empathy and kindness from this person, in the face of women, where there's a sort of a gentle approach there, and he does actually show it in some cases. But it's interesting how there's a disparity between like what's popular right now in young men being with Andrew Tate versus now where you're at. Is this something new for you? Like, has this been something that you've kind of pivoted to recently? Have you always believed in this?
I would say I went through, stages myself, like back 4 years ago when I first started as a coach, I didn't have anywhere near the perspective I had today. I would still tell guys, like, I think it was all about the external things. Like, okay, say this, wear these kind of clothes, like have these kind of photos on dating apps, like do this, say that. And then I started to realize over time that it was much deeper.
Mm. Mm. Well, elaborate. Don't just leave us there. Much deeper. How?
Yeah, so I started to realize that I think a lot of the reason why guys don't get success with women is because they don't really have a strong sense of identity, Like any guy who comes to a dating coach and they're like, okay, give me a script for what to say, like A to Z. It's like,
Yeah.
They need a script because they don't really know themselves. At the same time, it can be good to have, some basic guidelines. And I still give my students like, okay, here's some things you can say in this situation and do. But I try to tailor it as much to who they truly are. Because I think one of the biggest problems with most dating coaches is they give you what worked for them, but what worked for them isn't necessarily isn't going to work for every guy who comes to them. And they'll give the same advice that they will to like a 18-year-old as they would like a 45-year-old man.
They try and cookie cutter it, make it easy.
Yeah, it's nuts. So the thing
Might
that
as
I
well
try
just sell a course. I mean,
what was that?
So might as well just sell a course if it's one size fits all.
Yeah, well, that's most programs out there. But yeah, I try to look at everyone as an individual and get them to really connect with what's true for them, who are they really. And a lot of guys don't really know who they are. And that's where the nice guy, people pleasing, bending over backwards for everyone thing comes in. Those are guys who don't have a strong sense of identity. Like they don't know who they are. So they bend over backwards to do everything women want. But women don't want someone who supplicates. It's like what women really want is a guy who just unapologetically owns who he is. And he'll be compatible with the right woman. And like I said, he'll repel all the women who aren't good for him.
Yeah. And I feel like even for myself, there's a level of identity issue for me. Because, like I know I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an investor, I was born to be an entrepreneur. I was basically selling from by the time that I was crawling, right? So I know that that's part of my purpose, but I think some of the identity crisis, like there's a little bit of imposter syndrome that comes into the equation. And there's a certain level of, do people actually like or enjoy or watch what I do, and so there's that level of, validation, I suppose, that I'm trying to seek. And it's interesting because I'm actually getting the validation. Like I think probably 5 different occasions this year, I've had people openly reach out to groups and communities online and say, oh my God, I just got off the phone with Dean. And, it's not his core business. He doesn't do business coaching or anything, but it's just opened up my mind. And it's, like I'm seeing all these great things now and it all makes sense. And, I have to thank Dean for it. And then I'm kind of in a situation where I'm just like, I think there's a better way to put this. I suppose I'm seeking gratification from the work that I do, but I'm not seeing it in the big numbers that I thought I'd hope to. And like this could be viewers, this could be engagement, comment engagements. But then I'm also seeing that a lot of people are supporting me, but I'm having a hard time accepting that. And I feel like that comes down to identity as well, and a little bit of that imposter syndrome. I mean, what's your take on that?
Right. So do you feel like uncomfortable if someone gives you a compliment?
Well, there's that too. Yeah, definitely. I think there's a little bit of uncertainty in my mind of, am I going in the right direction? Is this true who I truly am? Is this actually going to work? And then that all falls down to the identity side, which is, am I being who I'm supposed to be?
Mm. Yeah, it's like often we have to prioritize like following, what we truly want to do, regardless of how people react to you, how people respond, or whatever external outcome may happen. So you kind of got to prioritize doing what you want over the outcome in those situations. So to detach, and that's something that I work a lot with on guys. Like they'll be on a date, they'll be super attached to the outcome of like it going really well, and that's what messes everything up. Whereas if they were just free, saying what they want to say, doing what they want to do, but it can be very hard with business and marketing. And I've also experienced that myself, because it's like you've got an audience and it's like, of course, you're out here making like profit, like this is what you do. This is how you put food on the table. So it's like, I think with marketing and business, it's especially difficult to stay true to yourself whilst also, doing things that resonates with people. And it's a constant battle, even for me, like I think about things in quite a complex way because I've been doing this for quite a while and whatever else. But it's like you got to meet people where they're at the same time. So it's difficult, man. But I guess at the end of the day, it's a balance. I guess that's what I've found.
Absolutely. Hey, we're all on a journey, brother. That's for sure. It's interesting, isn't it? It's so good. Listen, Hudson, we're out of time. We're actually overdue by 11 minutes. But yeah, that's what I said, man. I said to you at the start, we could just keep going with this conversation. But, mate, it was amazing speaking with you. How can people find you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, so just check me out on Instagram, Hudson Greening Mentoring.
Yeah,
and,
IG.
Facebook, if you're old school, just Hudson Greening, type it in there.
I'm still a bigger fan of Facebook than I am Instagram. I feel old school, definitely.
Yeah, I am too, yeah.
No, I love it. So, and do you have a website or anything like that, or?
Yeah, so I'm actually running a free masterclass on how to attract a high-quality woman into a long-term relationship. So you can go check that out at yourperfect10.org.
Okay, yourperfect10.org. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hudson, thanks so much for your time today, man. Really appreciate it. It was a great chat.
Yeah, it's great, man.
Absolutely. And for you, all of you at home, if you want to get in touch with Hudson directly, feel free to email us as well at support@launchday.au. Put in the subject line Hudson's name and LaunchDay shorts, and we'll get right onto that and put you in touch. And for all of those that are listening, whether you're at home, whether you're at work, you're in the lounge room, you're in the shower. I mean, it's, it'd be a bit weird, but I say this every podcast. Yeah. You got your wine, you're in the bathtub, you got your bubbles, you got your wine. I love that. Definitely. Great place to listen. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of the Launch Day Shorts podcast.